Lucille Ball and Des Arnold were the first interracial couple to ever appear on television in their sitcom show, I Love Lucy. This show premiered 16 years before the landmark Supreme Court case Loving versus Virginia, which struck down state laws banning interracial marriage in the United States. Since then, we have seen biracial and interracial families in everything, from movies to TV shows to now even print advertising. Recently, companies and brands like JP Morgan, Chase, Harmona, Smile Direct Club, Coors Light, Macy's, Tide, Clorotic, and many other brands have featured multiracial couples and families in their advertising. In what I like to call the biracial boom. But why are all these companies jumping onto this diversity bandwagon? Today, we'll look at where interracial advertising started, how it's affecting our world, and lastly, how this is more than just advertising. And it's actually part of a bigger issue. This is bigger than some corporate bottom line or cultural wars. It's real people's lives. Advertising has become the fabric of our lives, and we are bombarded with commercials when we are watching TV at home, when we're driving in our cars, or even when we're at the movie theater. They have our attention, and there used to be a time when advertisements only featured white faces and white families, and never showed interracial couples or black families. But have you noticed the recent boom of biracial families being featured? When did this start? Actually, not that long ago. A Cheerios television commercial in 2013 made history for having the first interracial family on a television commercial. This commercial consisted of a little girl carrying a Cheerios box to her white mother to ask several questions. Then she went to speak with her black father who was lying on the sofa. This commercial ignited a storm, and the station and the company was bombarded with negative and very racist comments. State Farm also received backlash around the same time for their engagement advertisement, which featured a black man proposing to a white woman, which particularly attracted some criticism from racists. And even after 50 years of the Supreme Court deciding that laws banning interracial marriage was unconstitutional, and the number of interracial marriages have increased significantly in the country, and there's less social shame attached to it. However, as evidenced by the reaction to a recent Old Navy ad released last year featuring an interracial family, where some social media users called it anti-white propaganda or that it promoted white genocide, there is still social hostility and challenges to interracial marriages and families. Positive or negative though, these companies know that they're going to get a reaction when they use interracial advertising, explained Shobha Barhart, a marketing professor at San Francisco State University in California. He said, while the ads may attract consumers who come from biracial families or relationships, they also pull in consumers whose values align with diversity in TV commercials and other forms of advertising. So while the days of negativity are far from gone, the fact that these brands have continued to feature this type of diversity means that they're having success. While interracial ads may reflect an increasingly diverse America becoming more of the melting pot, they don't mirror society. According to a Morgan State University professor named Jason Johnson, Johnson notes that 70% of interracial commercials from the past 4 years show a white man and a black woman, when the reality, he said, is a black man and white woman is more common in America. Quote, ads showing a white man with a black woman are soothing to white people because it makes them more comfortable than seeing a black man with a white woman, Johnson said. In other words, many industries rather make minorities more approachable by pairing them with a white person. Interracial couples on commercials do not make America any less racist. It just proves that advertisers have evolved. But American advertising still has a long way to go before it calls itself representative of the real world today. Because while we're getting diversity and representation for black and white couples, what about all the different kinds of interracial couples? Chinese, Asian, Native American, Mexican, or other ethnicities with a white person are rarely ever shown. According to the Journal of Advertising Research of 2022 states, companies were traditionally cautious when using ads featuring interracial couples, which could, quote, elicit negative emotions and negative attitudes towards the ad. And I mean, history speaks for itself. The difference is, those ads were from over a decade ago, and this research was done just last year. One thing we need to remember is that these models who pose together isn't just an ad. It's someone's life. It's my life. It's my life that people are calling anti-white propaganda. It's my life people are saying is disgusting and unnatural. And the numbers don't lie. According to new research from the University of Washington, suggests that biases against interracial couples is associated in disgust, which in turn lead interracial couples to be dehumanized. We need to address the biases we have within ourselves when it comes to interracial couples. Because even though today 87% of Americans would say they approve of interracial marriages between Black and white people, that response drastically changes when they're asked more directly. And how would they feel if a close relative was to marry someone outside of their race? Results from a Pew Research Center show that more than half of Blacks are in favor of a close relative marrying a white person. However, those results are drastically lower when it comes for white people. Among only 1 in 4 said that they would be in favor of a close relative marrying a Black person. Such findings show that interracial relationships are still unfavorable in the United States. Although the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in the 1960s that laws banning interracial relationships violated our 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, whatever one thinks on this topic, one thing is for sure. Being in an interracial relationship is almost always going to make some people uncomfortable. And this isn't just on the scale of advertising anymore. In March, Senator Mike Buren of the Republican Party, the Indiana Republican senator, said that he would be in support of the Supreme Court overturning the Loving versus Virginia decision and leaving the decision to interracial marriages to the states. Overturning Loving versus Virginia, the Supreme Court case that ruled state laws banning interracial marriage was unconstitutional. And even after almost 60 years, interracial couples still have to fear that their marriages aren't secure. At one point or another in my life, I'm going to be in an interracial relationship and then have an interracial family. And I don't want my children to ever feel like their family or themselves should have to feel ashamed of who they are because of the blend of races they have in their skin. I don't want my children to grow up and have to feel the same way I had to in this type of society. When I see those ads, I see myself being just somewhat represented in just a little piece of our society. And yet it gets labeled as woke propaganda. Today, we looked at where interracial advertising started, how it's affecting our world, and lastly, how this is more than just advertising, and it's actually part of a bigger issue. Interracial couples should feel safe and be able to love just like any other couple in America, and not have to worry about being dehumanized or discriminated against because of it.